Hi and welcome to Podpadstudios episode 22. I'm Master Maker and this is the fourth instalment of our Dalek Obsession series, where we meet Dalek owners who build Daleks obsessively.
Some people ask us, can I buy a Dalek?
No.
The answer is no, because Daleks,
You're not meant to buy a Dalek.
Copyright for them is owned by the BBC and Terry Nation.
Terry Nation, yeah.
It's all a bit grey, because in the beginning of the series, way back in the 60s, it was done on such a small budget, and the contracts weren't as tight as they are now about who owns what.
Nobody was controlling anything, were they?
No,
You
not
like
really.
if you designed it, you ended up owning it.
Yeah, so Terry Nation wrote the second episode or episodes with Daleks in, invented them as per writing them, and then was credited with owning them. So he kind of co-owns them. And genuinely,
Can you imagine that happening nowadays?
I know.
Whereas a massive big corporation just brings a designer and says, you just build something and design something, you can have the copyright and we won't worry about all the millions of dollars and pounds we can make from it later on.
It'd be like Disney saying, oh, Wookiee, we're not quite sure if we own a Wookiee. You know, anyone can use them. But what's actually happened is, it is like the plans have been available and people can use them. But the story about Terry Nation, who, by the way, Terry Nation wrote Blake 7 as well, so I just think, what a story writer. What a story writer. Anyway, the story about him is that they did the episodes with the Daleks in the early 60s. They did 2 films, and then there was about 7 Daleks left over. 3 went to Sugar Puffs and were given away as competition prizes. Really? And 4 of them ended up with Terry Nation, and he's probably the first Dalek obsessive.
Do you know what would be amazing? To actually track down those 3 Daleks that were given. I mean, where are they now?
Where are those Daleks?
I mean, also, how much would they be worth?
I know.
They need to be in a museum somewhere, don't they? That could be incredible, that.
There's loads of stories like that online. We'll put a few links below. Yeah. And one of the other places you can go to look for information on Daleks, which a lot of our Dalek builders have mentioned, is Project Dalek, which
used
was
to be the Builders Guild.
The Builders Guild,
Dalek
or the Dalek
Builders
Forum.
Guild,
It's sort of evolved, and there's just so much information there. Whether you're building a full-scale particular Dalek and you want the exact details, all the plans are there.
That's what I'm saying, the plans are there. So if someone came to us and say, because we said, could you buy a Dalek? Most builders would say, no, but I can point you in a direction where you can download the plans and you can make your own. Yeah. And the community is huge, so you're always going to get people saying, oh, I'll help you with that, or I'll suggest this, or...
Yeah, and the idea was those plans were there, so people would build them themselves. They would never be financially gaining from them.
They're not going to gain profit from them.
And a lot of people do use their Daleks to make charity, to raise money for charity, which we've got in our second Dalek owner this week. We'll show you all about that. And really that's why the forum exists and why it's so brilliant. But first, we've got to go to our first Dalek owner this week, which is Nigel and Big Red. Yeah. Have a look at this. So I'm here with Nigel and his Dalek. Thanks for coming on the show, Nigel. And I just wondered if you could tell us what's your Dalek called and why?
Well, it doesn't have a name as such. It's known as Big Red.
Yep.
But I was told by my niece, Evie, that all the Daleks that had names came to a sticky end. They either died or got killed. Certainly through the sort of like a new series of Doctor Who anyway. So no name. It just got called Big Red.
Okay.
If you can work out why.
Because it's big and it's red. So why did you choose this type of Dalek? It's a new Paradigm Dalek.
The choice was twofold. First of all, it was the one that my daughter wanted. Being about 7 when this one came out in 2010.
Daddy, can I have a Dalek?
After seeing, you might know Mark Enright and AD and all that.
Might know Mr. Maker,
Yeah, we saw those and my daughter wanted one. But having never built one, we decided that any Dalek was going to be as complicated as the next one.
But this is big, this one.
Yeah.
I mean, you were saying it's just a couple of inches bigger than it should have been?
Yeah, only because we need some clearance to get it in and out of places.
And is this one that you get in, or is it a remote control one?
Used to get in it. Used to be a wheelchair.
Okay.
Now it's fully remote control.
So tell us a bit about the making of it. I mean, it is fabulous, really cool quality. But everything is bigger than the other Daleks. So the normal route for obtaining bits for Daleks, like the hemispheres and the skirt, probably wouldn't apply.
You can't really get much off the shelf. The hemispheres are bigger than the other Daleks.
Right.
I'm very lucky that I've got a very friendly neighbour called Mike,
right,
who decided to take pity on me and come and help me.
Good on you, Mike.
And we just cast everything new. Everything is cast.
Wow.
Everything's fiberglass. These took forever to make individually. None of these are the same size, and they were all cast out of fiberglass. The dome I cheated. It's a 1960s dome.
Oh, okay.
And I've just filled it out so that it instead the normal dome sort of like comes down and then it goes flat down the sides.
Right.
And this has just been shaped so it goes all the way around and looks about right. We measured it to be about half a centimetre out compared with the plans.
Ah.
There were plans for this
Right.
dimensions on Project Dalek.
Yeah, so plans are available for a lot of the Dalek builds on Project Dalek because they were made available, weren't they, at the time?
They're only dimensions though, they're not
Yeah.
how do you do it.
No, it just gives you the dims of how wide, how tall, how high, and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then from that, a huge community of people have built up in building these Daleks.
Well, that's how I know you guys.
This is what we've got in common. So in a minute we're going to have a little look inside of the Dalek,
Yep.
but first maybe you'd like to tell us about some shows you've been to and the places you've taken it?
We haven't gone anywhere national with it. We've kept it very very local. The Corsham days when they were running the Chippenham events, and the gathering that we had last year, that world record attempt.
That was really cool.
Actually, we call it an attempt. Actually, we smashed it. It didn't do the Guinness Book of Records, but there were more Daleks there than any before.
There was lots and lots of Daleks, and we're going to talk about that in another episode.
Brilliant. So hopefully we're going to do that again as well, aren't we?
Yeah. Hopefully we're going to do that again once all the COVID's over. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just have a little look inside.
Okay. When we built the voice modulator, we bought lots of PCB.
Yeah.
And we've etched some slip rings onto the top of here.
Right.
And they marry up with the connections on the dome, and it means that we can get all the voltages and all the signals up to the dome, but we can keep on turning the dome around and around and around and not have to worry about anything breaking.
It's a fabulous way of overcoming a problem that you found during the build. I love it.
It took us a little while, Mike and myself, we took some time working out quite how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
And when you see the contacts on the other side, you'll see the sort of time that we took to decide on just how to do it and make sure that there was contact there all the time.
Yeah, really, really cool.
In the front here we've got the voice modulator, we've got a radio mic, a receiver and an amplifier so that it can be reasonably loud, and there's other little power supplies, 5-volt power supplies for powering other things in there, the relays and the lights and such. But it does mean that we can be in front of the Dalek maybe sort of like 10 metres away, 5 metres away, and we can talk to the kids in front of them.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll get a savvy dad that'll come along and say, his name's Peter and he's 8 years old. And then you can then just terrify the poor kid. In the back is the drive system, fuses, a few switches for lights and stuff like that.
Really
but really,
neat.
it's got quite an echo. There's nothing in it.
Really neat wiring, and of course it's all got to be disconnectable for anything for the head.
Yes, the head is connected. That is that goes up to the slip rings.
Yeah.
And those go up to the loudspeakers.
Yeah. Really cool. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much, Nigel and Big Red, and big thanks to Big Red for removing his dome in public. Very brave thing to do. Someone been smoking in the workshop again? Vicky, I've told you loads of times, no smoking in the workshop. And that's actually a really good time to pop over to Master Maker, who's going to tell you all about how to make a Dalek smoke.
Right, when we're out at sort of Comic Cons, we get asked a great deal about our smoke machines that are inside the Dalek and how much, how can we produce so much smoke effects from the Dalek? What's the secret? So I'm going to share some of the secrets with you of how we make these things. Now, some people make smoke effects out of vape systems. They take vapes, they customise them. Some people buy little mini smoke machines, the ones that you have in steam engines and model steam engines. We use a variety of different systems. This one, I've talked about these before. These are great. About 20 quid on eBay, Amazon. They're basic little portable ultrasonic nebulizers, and the idea is really, really simple. You fill them with water. You can power them from a 9-volt battery if you want to, or 12 volts. You pop the top back on, you turn it on, you put a tube on here, there's a fan in here, takes the vapor and it pushes it out and it creates a smoke effect. And we use these a lot in our smaller models. They're really, really good. They run for about 10 minutes on high powered setting, and then there's a low powered setting that runs for about 15 minutes. And the reason that they do that is these things need to cool down. There's only a very small reservoir of water. And the way that these work is they basically shake the water at ultrasonic kind of speeds, and it turns the water into a vapor. Now, as I said, for our smaller models, we use these off the shelf, but for the bigger stuff, we custom make things. And here's an example of one of the ultrasonic elements. And you can see here, you can actually see the element in here. And basically, these are things that you can buy. Now, these were originally used for in ornamental ponds. And you put them in your ornamental ponds. They come in lots of varieties. Here's one with lots of LEDs. So you put them in your ornamental pond and you plug it in, and your vapor comes out a bit like the cauldron with the witches at Macbeth. You know, sort of with the vapor going everywhere. And you've got LEDs. And as I said, online you can buy them in lots of guises. Here's a massive big one. This one's got 5 elements in one, so it produces a huge amount of vapor. As I said, that one's got LEDs in it. This one doesn't have LEDs. And then you've got the very, very basic ones. Now, little word of warning when you're buying these. These generally come with a power adapter. And you basically plug it in, drop it into a bowl of water, and you get the vapor out of them. But read the small print. Most of these run on 24 volts AC. That's alternating current. That means they need to run off mains, which is no good if you're going to power this off a battery-powered Dalek. They're not going to work. So you need to look for ones that run on DC current. That's really, really important. They're a little bit more difficult to find. Generally, they all run on 24 volts. I haven't found anything as yet that runs on lower voltages. So 24 volts. But most of us on the Daleks, we run at 24 volts anyway for our drive system. So running these is pretty straightforward. Now, as I said, they work by the element in here shakes the water ultrasonic and basically creates a vapor. Now, I'm going to demonstrate that now. I've got one here. Now, I've just tied the wires together at the moment, so just ignore that a little bit. And I'm going to plug this into just a mains-powered 24-volt DC. Here's my simulated water. Well, it's not simulated water, it's actually real water. So what I'm going to do is drop that into the water, and you're going to see what will happen. And you can see when it's submerged in the water, it creates a vapor. And we could blow that away. And they're really cool. It's a really, really cool effect. You can see how this could be used in a theatre for a cauldron. It's a brilliant effect, especially when it's lit. Now, let's just unplug that. I'm going to move that to one side. Now, the way these work is that they have got inside them the ultrasonic element, but there's a switch. So when that switch is immersed in water, it turns the element on. So the beauty of this is that they stop working when they're out of water. However, one thing I've found from experience with these, quality control on all these things varies massively. Most of them come from Chinese suppliers. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad or they're good. I've had some of these things that have lasted for years and they're brilliant, but I've also had some that have lasted for hours and they look exactly the same. And the way they fail is they burn out, they get hot. Bear in mind that when this goes into the water, you're shaking the water at ultrasonic speeds, and of course that generates heat in the water. The more of them you put in the water, or even just one in the water, it heats the water up. And that's why these go off after about 10 minutes, because the water supply is tiny. It produces a lot of vapor, but the water supply is tiny, and the water heats up, so they need to cool down. If you're going to build one of these and you drop these into water, there's no way to cool that water. When that water in the reservoir that you're using eventually heats up, it heats the element up and it burns the element out. Sometimes they go quickly, sometimes they don't. When they fail, they just stop working, or they burn out and make a horrible smell. I suggest when you use these systems, any of these, you wire them into a circuit with a switch and a fuse, which protects everything else in your system, but it also, you know, minimises any damage. You can then just replace these, put new elements in and whatever. Now, these can't just be used on their own, because as you notice from there, it creates a lot of water everywhere, and also the vapour isn't directed. So what we do is we build housings. Now this is a very kind of, this is the one that's come out of one of the Daleks. This actually has come out of Vicky. And you notice straight away the water reservoir is huge. I mean, compare the water reservoir of this to this. Now, the advantage of the larger water reservoir is greater cooling. So if I'm running elements, I actually run 3 of these elements inside this one. The water reservoir is much, much bigger. So when I put these elements in, you can see that they stay cool much, much longer. I still only run them for about 20 minutes, and then I'll turn the system off, let it cool and start again, or I'll replenish the water and put some nice cold water back in there. The way it works though is the element sits in the bottom. This top bit then goes on. As you notice here, there is a little fan on the top. This is a computer fan which will spin. What that then does is it takes the vapour that's being generated in here and it blows it and it directs it out of this hole, and that hole then takes the vapour off and it moves it wherever I want to do it, into a chimney or whatever. Now you notice that the fan is mounted on a little pole here. In here, the fan is right at the top and the water's right at the bottom. Here I've replicated that, the fan's up here and the water's down here. Now, if you remember, when we put this into the pot, this little thing into the pot of water, it created a plume of water. If you mount the fan too close to the element here, the plume of water goes into the fan and it burns the fan out. Fan just stops working because water and electricity generally don't mix. So mount the fan further away, it blows the air down and it pushes it through. And in here I've mounted a little variable resistor so I can speed up or slow down the fan. If you run the fan nice and slowly, you get real thick white vapour coming out. If you speed the fan up, you get more vapour, but it's thinner, basically. This was a custom one made for Victoria. Here are other ones I've built in the past, and yes, they do look like sink traps, because that's exactly what they are. And a sink trap, I discovered, is exactly the right shape. You take the bottom off, pop your element in there, you fill it with water, fill it up to where the O-ring is, whack a computer fan on the top part, power that up, and there's a hole there which goes off, you know, to your U-bend or whatever it is, and that's where your vapour comes out, and they work brilliantly. Because your water's in the bottom, your fan is separated from the water, the vapour forms in here and it basically blows out the hole. Now, powering the fans, you can't generally run these fans on 24 volts. You can get fans that run on 24 volts, so if you want to run your whole system on 24 volts, then make sure you get a 24 volt fan. I use 12 volt fans, so I actually feed into this. I feed in 12 volts for the fan and 24 volts for the vapour system. And that way I separate the voltages. I just keep a dedicated voltage for each one and I don't get any problems with it at all. So basically, that in essence is it. You've got your element, which is submersed in water. You feed it with power. A fan blows the vapour out of a hole. You can control the speed of that. You need an enclosure to put that in. Preferably build your enclosure so it doesn't leak everywhere. And that's the beauty of these little water traps. They come with the O-ring. You know, they're designed not to leak. Put it together. With all of these, they must be upright. These elements, if they're submersed in too much water, they do not work. They only need literally a centimetre of water above them for them to operate. So the level of water in here is actually quite critical. If you put too much in, you don't get any vapour. If you put too little in, the switch isn't covered and they don't work. But with any of these, you cannot turn them over. If you turn them over, all the water runs out and you get wet and you don't get any vapour. Right, so while I overhaul Victoria's smoke system here, we're going to go and meet a guy who managed to get together 87 Daleks in one room. Watch this.
Skaros, his name just popped into my head. He's based on the Renegade Supreme from Remembrance of the Daleks, which I bought as a pile of bits of an Imperial Dalek. I rebuilt him in 4 weeks for my daughter's wedding in 2015. He's mostly plywood and MDF with some fiberglass. I added a water gun, a Zerimod voice modulator, lights and an electric wheelchair. After the wedding, we started going to various Comic-Cons and other events, raising money for charity. Jherek is the new one. He's a silver blue NSD built by Stuart Curry, one of 7 built for the fan film Power of the Daleks Reimagined. He's named after Jherek Carnelian, a character in Dancers at the End of Time by Michael Moorcock. He's mostly MDF and fiberglass. I've only given Jherek a partial respray and added a Dartek voice modulator and some mesh behind the shoulder slats to hark back to the 60s Daleks. He's also foot-powered. He hasn't been out yet, so I don't know how tired I'm going to get. Well, Skaros can be a bit rude and sassy, and he gives out jelly babies, and that lures the kids in close for easy extermination. As I say, Jherek hasn't been out yet. I also cosplay the Master and the 1st, 4th, 8th and 11th Doctors, and we own a TARDIS called Idris. My long-suffering other half Gaynor cosplays Osgood and makes sure Skaros doesn't bump into things when he's out trundling, and when she's not busy talking to everybody. Science of the Time Lords at the National Space Centre in Leicester is a great Doctor Who event every January, well worth going to. Fantasy Forest at Sudeley Castle in July 2019 had an amazing atmosphere. Everyone was so friendly. Incredible cosplays, great entertainment, displays and stalls. The Doctor Who experience in Cardiff. We took Skaros with a small group of other Daleks that experienced 4 times in the last 3 months before it closed. We were lucky to be invited back by the BBC for the final day as their guests and to stay for the party after it closed. A very emotional day for us all. And The Gathering in March 2019 in Chippenham in Wiltshire, Sons of Skaro's very own event where we attempted the world record for the largest gathering of Daleks. We managed 87, 75 full-size Daleks and 12 costumes. The record is 95, made up of 44 actual Daleks and 55 costumes, so I think we have the record for most actual Daleks. Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, Terry Malloy were amongst our guests, and they hope to come back for the next one. Because as we didn't quite hit the official record, we're having another go in November 2021 in Swindon. My favourite Doctor, William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton and Tom Baker were the ones I grew up with. I never really warmed to John Pertwee or the others quite as much. And of the newer Doctors, I think Matt Smith is probably my favourite.
Exterminate! Vicky, you alright, mate? You're making strange noises there. Oh, hiya. Just want to say thank you so much to Robert Cowley and The Gathering for that interview. It was absolutely fab, and we really enjoyed the event last year. Looking forward to the one in November next year. Meantime, I got to see where Master Maker is because I'm a bit worried.
What's going on? I'm trying to fix Vicky.
Oh, well, we need to talk about the sound system. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort it out. I'm trying to repair it.
Well, this will be a good time to tell these guys all about the sound systems.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so the sound system on Victoria is actually relatively straightforward, but there's a little bit of technology behind how she is so loud. Now, nowadays, you can use any sort of systems. I'm going to demonstrate here how we build a sound system. But, for example, you can get these things, Bluetooth speakers. And we use these in a lot of our vehicles. They're amazingly powerful. They run on batteries. I mean, this one, I think, runs for like 24 hours or something ridiculous. And, it only has these tiny little speakers inside it, but it produces such good volumes. Not a massive amount of bass, but they're loud. And then obviously there's one here. It's another Bluetooth speaker, bigger speakers, so obviously a little bit more bass. In Victoria, she's got a custom-made sound system, and as I mentioned, it is actually relatively straightforward. It uses something like this. This is basically a car amplifier, so the sort of thing you put into a car to build your sound system in your car. This is an open back one that can be mounted into a dash. So you see you've got your controls and you can plug your speakers and your power and everything in. Here is one that is completely self-contained. So, there's you just put it in a boot or something, plug your power in, plug your speakers in, and then, away you go. Now, a lot of people do that when in models. They put an amplifier in, they connect a speaker to it, they turn it up as loud as possible. And obviously these all come in different powers. And bear in mind that the bigger the power of the amplifier, the more power you will draw from your battery, because it's all proportionate. So as the volume goes up, you draw more power out of your battery. So it will go flat much, much quicker. And that's just straightforward kind of physics. There's nothing you can do about that. So they connect their amplifier to their speaker, they mount their speaker in front of the Dalek, and they wonder why it's not very loud. They turn the volume up and the volume starts to distort because there's too much power, and it overdrives the speaker. And what that means is this cone here, basically the way they work is this cone bounces up and down and it moves the air. And if it moves the air too much, it distorts. Now, I've built speaker systems for many, many years, and the one thing I've learnt is it's not about just adding more power and adding bigger speakers. It's about understanding the physics behind it all. You know, speakers come in different sizes. There's a little speaker from a laptop. There's a bigger kind of speaker there. They come in all different shapes and sizes, speakers. However, if I plug these two speakers, for example, or all of these into these amplifiers and powered them all up, this little one here would still be louder. And the simple reason that it is louder is because the speaker is encased in a box. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how this works. I think you need to read about it. You need to understand speaker design. And I suggest you go away and Google speaker design, and you will learn so much, and you'll be amazed how loud you can then make your Dalek sound. But basically, if you think about this, sound will come forward from the cone, but sound also goes backwards. Up to 40% of the sound that's going in here goes backwards. Now, if this is mounted in the open air, that means the sound that's radiating forwards, your audience is hearing, but the sound that's going backwards has just been wasted. You're just wasting all that power. Put that speaker into an enclosure and duct that power back out towards the audience, and effectively you're doubling your sound. And that's what I've done in Victoria. So inside her pretty much half of the interior is an encased speaker system. It's been designed so it ducts the power from the speaker. I'm using a couple of these speakers. I'm ducting the power from these speakers. I'm, if you like, channeling that volume, that air moving out towards the audience, and it, as I mentioned, doubles, if not triples, the amount of volume that you'll get from the same size speaker. So you're optimizing the use of your power and the design, and that's what it's all about. It's not just about loads of power, it's not just about loads of speakers, it's about designing the system so it works really, really well. Go away, Google it, read about it. You will be amazed at what you can do and the volume you can get, even with tiny little things. Have you ever wondered why these things are just so good? They're good because they're well designed. That's why they're so good. Anyway, now for something completely different.
In a previous episode, we were talking to you about solar panels in the rain. Now, we're going to talk to you about gonk droids in the rain, because I want to give you an update on how my gonk droid tomato plant is doing. Ta-da! Nature has done its work, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 tomatoes on the gonk droid. Yay!
Okay, so that's it, I'm afraid. That's the last of our Dalek series, basically.
Or is it?
Why?
Well, we've had that many comments, and we know there's 87 Daleks out there somewhere.
That is true.
So I reckon there's probably another couple of episodes. Where are you? Give us a little comment, or get in touch with me by Facebook, or
and we would love to feature you on the show. We can share with how you build them and all. I
think there's a couple more shows out there. So come on, you Dalek owners, give us a little note. And in the meantime,
subscribe,
share, like
all the other stuff.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.